Morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the daily medicine transmission for the last day of November, November 30th. Really good to be back into this particular routine. I've been out of it since last week with Thanksgiving and my birthday and all of the things that go along with that. And so things have felt very discombobulated, although very peaceful in a lot of ways. Some things not going according to plan as per usual. Might as well just get used to that. But it's great to be back in this space with everyone. So welcome back, everyone, to my subscribers and my consistent viewing audience. I hope you're doing well, taking very good care of yourselves right now. We have a lot to talk about, as per usual as well. I mean, there's certainly nothing boring about these times, and sometimes it does feel a little overwhelming. So today's transmission is entitled Let It Burn, because we have, these connections to Chiron and Aries today, big ones. Antares is in the picture, which is the rival of Mars. We're going to go into Antarian starseeds and the concept of purification and homeopathy. And really just what does it take to withhold the sting of the bitter truth? In a lot of ways, this is what Antares can really stand for. So, but it also has that really hot, fiery side to it. And Antares is a very large star, and is in fact a portal or a stargate from two different galaxies. So, we have an intuitive message for today's transmission, of course, and I would very much like to share that. And it does appear that we're in this really I don't necessarily want to call it a harvest, because that's not what it is. It is a burning away, and rest assured, it's burning away whether you intend for it or not. It's really about your experience along the way that is determined by our own actions, our choices, and where we choose to put our perspective and our intention. So this solar eclipse is coming on the 4th, and yes, this eclipse portal will be closing at that point, but the reverberation of what these last 2 weeks have really meant is going to spread out for the next 6 months. And I talked a lot about what to expect astrologically in my eclipse report called Emergence. You can find that on my any of the channels, YouTube, Odysee, or BitChute. And you can go through the astrology of the next 6 months and what to expect as we unfold in this ripple of time. And one of the things that I said yesterday, too, is rather than being on the other side of this ripple of time or this time wave, we have the capacity to really be that time wave, or to resonate with the frequency of that time wave and be part of how time and space unfolds for all of us while we're still here in this dimension of reality. So that'll be a lot of what we work with going forward through the next 6 months, and certainly there will be lots of astrology to look at. I actually want to go back today to 6 months prior and look at a particular time frame that really, if we had been, I wouldn't say had been paying attention, but we there was a full moon, there was a Scorpio full moon at the end of April that really opened something up. It was like looking through a window, or being able to look into the magic mirror and really see and feel into what could possibly be unfolding during this time. And in a lot of ways it was unexpected, but also was placed right in front of us, and showed us what we had to work with, where our soul's trajectory was really pulling us towards. And also too, it was a very strong Draco full moon back in April. And when we've talked about the Draco before, in terms of starseeds. We've really explored what it means to have access to this type of serpentine power, but to use it in a way that is only for healing purposes or for service to others, and how when we get caught in the trap or the net of self-preservation, if we get caught in exploitation, wanting to exploit other people, wanting to control other people, feeling disempowered, basically, and wanting to do something about that. This is where the Draco signature kind of goes sideways and leads us astray. So it's not so much the serpent as an icon, because it is just scattered. It's one of the primary symbols that you find cross-culturally, cross-historically, in terms of all religions and spiritual institutions. You find the serpent or the snake, even in indigenous cultures that don't have any real organized religion, but are very much shamanic in their practices. The serpent has a lot to do with healing energy and power of manifestation. So I want to go back and look at that particular Scorpio full moon, because there's a lot of overlap, and then there's some things that are not overlapped. We're going to see that Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune and Chiron all moving direct in very similar locations as to where they are right now. So there was a retrograde period with all of these larger outer planets, and they've since come back to very close to where they were at that time. And I feel like that was such a strong, clear picture of what could happen as a result of allowing the Draco element, especially for people that have strong Draco connections in their chart too. It was, and I do. It was right on a very specific part in my natal chart, and I got a very clear window view of something that is now unfolding right now that I was like, goddamn. You don't say. Oh my gosh. So I want to take a look at that, because this is the retrospective is really what helps us kind of see how these symbolic representations, these archetypal structures, right? These abstractions that we have given to these very clear cosmic cycles have an influence and interact with us, and can also give us a lot of insight, maybe well before it's ready to be consciously received, but at the time may still need to be imprinted on our subconscious so that it can unfold, that we have opportunities to learn and grow, and maybe even do our own research about certain things, or to compare and contrast. And hindsight is always 2020, right? So that's important to consider as well. So how is everyone doing? It's good to see you, even if you're on the chat, if you're on the replay. I really appreciate everyone's presence and just being present with themselves. So I hope everyone is doing well and kind of getting back into the swing. A lot has happened since we came back from the break, and it seems like a lot more is continuing to push forward. Neptune's going to station direct tomorrow, and just consider that Pisces and the 12th house especially, there is no separation between ourselves and everything else. The experience of being is inseparable from our own experience. And so in the 12th house especially, that is ruled by Pisces, and Neptune is in Pisces, we take with us into the next cycle. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? Take with us into the next cycle, the next Aries cycle, right? The new seed point of a creation. We take it with us. And if there is karma, if there's unresolved issues at any level, it comes with us. And I think that we are in a position right now at a micro level that is spreading out to the macro level of some very embedded and this is not exactly that, mind-blowing, but to really see it for what it is, and to actually feel an infiltration, and at an energetic level, at a subconscious level, at an occult level. And Pluto has recently, in the last day or so, moved into its next degree, which is with Pluto being so slow moving, just like Uranus and Neptune especially, even Saturn to a certain degree. When it moves into the next degree, or when the hand of the clock, right, ticks to the next minute, if you want to think about it that way. It's a very noticeable change because it moves so slowly, Pluto does. And so it's moved into a degree now where it's really going to pull back the curtain on the hidden enemy, yes, but also the often hidden energy that is underlying the creation of material reality, however you think about that, right? The matrix, the fractal geometry of material reality, right? The Capricornian essence that represents the unfolding of natural law, or in a human society sense, right? All of our institutions and all of our economy as a whole and corporate structures, these larger structures that require group integration, right? Capricorn, all of nature, folding of this, it's now that Pluto has moved into this next degree that represents the water energy, that feeling and the emotion and the spirit that moves through everything. And as we get closer and closer to the Aquarian archetype from Capricorn, you start to become more aware of the essence of that next sign. It's starting to make its way into the end of the previous sign. So Capricorn, cardinal Earth. But now we're starting to realize that there is something more that is moving within and throughout this material matrix, or the physical manifestation of our reality, or what it takes to create something more than ourselves. There's something that powers it and moves through it that is often hidden. Well, Pluto is going to be not only destroying everything that has been hiding it, but also too, because Pluto does rule Scorpio, right, which is fixed water. We had Mars just trine Neptune. The lid is being pulled back in a way that is going to be a whole new level now. And when I say let it burn, just let it burn, right? And Antares, we'll talk about Antares because it's so connected to Archangel Uriel as well, which is the fire of God, right? And I want to also, we're gonna look at last year, right? April 2021 at the Scorpio full moon, and look at the chart. Then we're going to remind ourselves about the lunar eclipse that we just had, and that trine between Venus and Uranus, because fire, again, was very involved in that process. And realize that everything that's happening right now is going to have us emerge like a phoenix rising come springtime. And it really won't start to kick into gear until about February. So we do have a lot of... I hate to say it, but it is, we do have a lot of dark winter type of energy that is upon us. And when Neptune stations direct, everything that we are going to take into the next cycle is going to be amplified. It's going to spread out. It's going to be expanded. And it's going to be very foggy when Neptune stations direct. Very confusing, very foggy. So if you have not aligned yourself with your own conscience by now, which Mars in that trine to Neptune yesterday was our kind of last real push, the moon in Scorpio over the next few days will be the last emotional kind of going over that point, but it'll be a dark moon, so it won't be nearly as obvious, but it'll be something that we still feel like this last imprint in our own subconscious and our own feelings about where does our conscience really lie? What truth are we aligned? Well, are we aligned with truth, or are we aligned with power, right? Are we interested in service to others? Are we interested in service to our own self-preservation? And again, power. So, and that's the thing about Scorpio. So Pluto being the ruler of Scorpio, moving into this next degree is really going to bring these themes to a whole new level for all of us. And you may find yourself wanting to drop bombs and set things on fire. And maybe that's something that you do need to do. It's really up to you to decide. But what I do see is a lot of fire in this chart and a lot of support from an unlikely support network or support post, which is actually exactly what Saturn can be. So we're going to look at all of that stuff today in the astrology. So let's get right into the intuitive reading first. And I don't have access to my bowl right now, so you know what to do. You know the drill. So we can get ourselves ready to go here and ready to receive the transmission, because it's going to be an interesting story that we're telling ourselves right now. So I hope shedding old energies. Some of them don't want to leave. I totally, yes, some of them don't want to leave. And this is what happens when you have maybe multi-generational attachments or karma. I'm definitely with you. There's some things that definitely don't want to leave, because it's like a parasite, you know? They are pulling from our own vital energies, that which they cannot create for themselves, because they're in alignment to taking power from others and taking power from those who are not aware of their existence and have been maybe attached for generations. I know for me personally, that's a lot of what I am personally working with, is a lot of the karma that is family related, but a lot of, they don't want to leave. Why would you if you've been attached and siphoning for so long? And this is where we have to let it burn away. And if we're not afraid of the fire, then it could actually work really well in our favor. But it's important to realize that other people have to go through their own process of their own free will. So you always want to stand in truth and be honest, but you don't necessarily have to, and to stand up for yourself, of course, but you don't always have to, there's a time and place for like setting fires, and maybe you're not the one, or we're not the ones that are setting the fires necessarily. Maybe we're leaving that up to source or God or whatever the divine agents, like the Archangel Uriel, which is in conjunction, which is Antares, which is making a trine to Chiron from the sun. Well, consistently making a trine to Chiron, but also to the sun, and Mercury in conjunction with Antares is a big part of this. Okay, and we'll get to that. There's a lot of really important astrology that we need to address. But for now, I did do a reading, so I want to make sure that we leave time for this, because we have been foolish, right? So here's our Fool reversed, my friends, as our causal factor. So when the Fool is reversed, it is not the happy-go-lucky, trusting your gut and being totally in that beginner's mind, 0 point, fully present in the moment. When the Fool is reversed, we've been careless, we've been reckless, we've been foolish, we've been irresponsible with ourselves. And this can manifest in a lot of different ways, kind of like useless daydreaming, or being kind of pretending to be crazy or mad genius, when really you're just like not completely, there's nothing to you, right? It's all sound and fury, signifying nothing. And this is the collective issue. So this is also something to consider too, that if you don't find yourself aligning with this in particular, although I'm pretty sure that just about everybody at this point can point to something and been like, wow, I was very foolish with my energy or my attention or my intention, and I allowed for I was reckless, I was careless, I was foolish. I thought that I was being present, and really I was just being, not responsible with myself. And a lot of people are experiencing and have experienced this and have exhibited this in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of foolishness in general. This also could just be very childlike in the way that we just give ourselves away, again, not necessarily being open to all the possibilities through our own instinct and gut, but allowing others to kind of point us in that direction and being susceptible. This is a lot of the Fool reverse, but it definitely does feel like a lot of foolishness and carelessness and recklessness with ourselves rather than being present and trusting our gut and honing that. I think that that's a big part of it too. A lot of people have been taken in, and you can see this in so many different ways unfolding right now. And I think that many of us are experiencing it too. So when we get to the eclipse, which is all about the alchemy that has to be, in order to perform the spiritual alchemy, we have to purify our constituent parts that we're bringing together. Otherwise, the impurities come with us come into the next creation. And that is just not going to stand. So with this eclipse being initiated on the 4th, that process is going to be drawn out for very many months, but it's going to close a window in some ways. So we're in a very interesting moment right now to be very honest with ourselves and to also be very aware of how we have been careless and foolish and reckless perhaps, and not actually trusting our gut, but trusting unnecessarily trusting other people and their madness, right? That's the other thing too, that people present themselves as like knowing anything, and we trust that they have the best intentions in mind because they say the right things. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, you actually, now that we're on the other side of things, wow, you don't really know anything. You just projected this image that was meant to, again, just for self-preservation. Man, this keeps coming up so strongly. And with all the Scorpio into Sagittarius energy right now, I mean, we've had some time to really consider this. So as we come into the moment, interesting card, 10 of discs, the wealth, but this is what has led me to the idea of a harvest, right? And it's not really a harvest, but it's the fruits of our labor where the richest potentials unfold. And we realize the complete amount of material game, and there is something coming full circle. And I would say with this full reversed, what's coming full circle is a big pile of shit that people don't necessarily want. Now, the other way to look at this in its most positive attribute is that it's because of our foolishness, it's because of our carelessness, it's because of this fake madness or not actually, trusting our gut either, that we've come to this moment here and we're like, oh, wow, I've learned so much as a result of that situation, or being in line with that recklessness or foolishness. And now it has come to its fruition, and you see and you feel it and you are aware, like, whoa. And the third quarter moon that we had was in Virgo, squaring that Sag sun on Saturday. And it really brought our awareness and our consciousness in that moment to the objective approach that we really do need to have towards our own energy body and our own energetic hygiene. Even though our focus and attention and expression is on, we're all in this together, the meaning of it all, let's work together. We have to also be aware that we each contribute our own resonance to this situation. And if we're not taking it seriously, we don't have an objective approach to it, if we don't realize how powerful it really is, and we are not prepared for that, that's going to influence the group effort that really has been grabbing a lot of our attention in terms of creative expression, but also mental focus because of Mercury in Sagittarius. So either way you look at it, there's almost a reckoning, but it's more of like everything that we have been working towards is now right here at the center. And the Five of Keys as our subconscious alignment, as our personal power, as our root system, we really do want to have our wishes fulfilled. Like, we really do want abundance, and that's what we're working for. And again, here is where that line between like self-preservation and actually just doing good works and receiving what you need from the universe is so thin. And people will act crazy and careless and foolish at times, even when they are rooted in a place of like, I want this type of material abundance. I want to realize my dreams. I want my wishes fulfilled. I want to feel safe and comfortable and be surrounded by beautiful these beautiful surroundings and really have everything that I want. And this is the root of it. And the thing is that what we're really seeing here is that the shit has already hit the fan in some ways. So let's look at the Eight of Forces, because it's reversed too. The lightning bolt, right? It cracks down, it splits the tree. You have the storm. When it's reversed, I mean, the storm is already dispersing, like it's already happened. And I think that this has been happening. And especially with Jupiter in Aquarius, it has been happening. Every time we get off our path or get out of our lane, Jupiter is just like, nope. As long as you're aligned with the same value system that I'm protecting or responsible for, I am going to give you what you need in order to continue fulfilling that bigger picture or belief system. So, but it's already passed. This is really where our awareness and conscious attention is the fact that it's already happened. It's already passed, right? The big destruction or and this is in our own lives, whatever that tower moment was, we're now focusing on picking up the pieces, setting down new roots, like actually getting into a zone of new growth and being aligned with the natural world in order to do that. Now, remember last week when we had the Wheel of Fortune that was reversed, and we talked about how it was almost like, the wheel's going to turn, and it's not going to turn in a way that we actually want or anticipated, but we still have to deal with it. Well, now we see that the wheel's definitely going to keep turning. Here's our Jupiter card, number 10, right? So we have a 0 right here with the Fool, and then the 10 is, in numerical digits is a 1 and a 0. So there is kind of this completion here that is representative of where we're going. So another turn of the wheel. This way it's upright, but that doesn't make it necessarily any easier because it is fire, right? And it reminds us that fate is the result of what we've already done. And our real power in this moment and the alchemy that we get from the fire of Jupiter can be, the way we deal with the results. And so everything, the universe is always moving, and it's our job to restart when this wheel turns and places us in a whole new position that it's not that we couldn't anticipate. And I think that is a real big, that notion is something that we should put a pin in as we go and explore the astrology from last spring, because it's not that we couldn't anticipate it, or it's just that we were not fully in the present moment in its entirety, and this was inverted in some way, this foolishness, so we didn't see it, but we still are acting on it, and now it's come to fruition, even though we've had at the root of it, I just want my wishes fulfilled. I want my dreams realized. I want abundance, right? And this in and of itself is not a bad thing, but you can see how being rooted in this position, it's like, okay, well, this is what you wanted. So now here we are, and the wheel's going to turn in a new direction or again, and we're going to be in a different position. And we have to accept that we have put ourselves in this position. Like, we are not the subject of, we make choices, and that is what fate is. It's a cause and effect relationship. Yes, there are things we cannot control for. Absolutely. And that's what the turning of the wheel is. We want to be the hub in the wheel that never changes, or at least some part of us is the hub in the wheel that never changes, but we may find ourselves somewhere else entirely. So letting it burn, right? Let it burn away, and realize that whatever is happening is the result of something that has already been put into place. And maybe we were being foolish about it and not being, I don't want to say not being realistic, but not truly in our beginner's mind. We were foolish and reckless, and not taking this position. I don't want to say seriously because there's nothing very serious about it, but also not respecting it, I guess, and having the wool pulled over our eyes. I think that's a big part of it. And now we're here. And best intentions of mice and men, right? This is something that we have to be very aware of. So when it comes to the Five of Keys, it's important that we realize the karmic trench has been in effect, right? Where the neural pathways that have been there for so long have just still been something we've been operating within. And it does reveal a difficult pattern in our life that is really hard to climb out of. And sometimes we don't even realize it's a pattern because we've just dug ourselves in and we've been digging multiple lifetimes over multiple dimensions. Maybe it's a karmic pattern within the family that you come from a line of people that just keep digging this trench. And it's really hard to get ourselves out of it. And also, too, what happens is when you dig that trench, or you're not even digging it or started digging it, but you are in the family line that is now, that has been digging it, and now you find yourself like, oh, I see that now. And this again goes back to actual like attachments, entity attachments, or, entities that follow family lines. That is very real, and that can come through your own past lives, or it can come very much through your genetics. And that's a very second house type of experience as well, is what comes through the family lines. And one thing about the cat here, it says it's time to strike out on your own and relinquish your overdependency on others, is very much about how our dependencies are born out of habit a lot of times. And this habit has probably been so deeply entrenched in our mind that we don't even realize that it's a habit. And this is how they've managed to hypnotize so many people and to get people to act foolishly and recklessly, because at the base, they really are just trying to do what's best for themselves and the people they care about. But there are very deep entrenched habits in place that have kept us from actually acting in our own interest and out of, in a way that wasn't dependent. So if you look at the Fool card upright, you see that there's a little cat, or like a small predatory cat, like a tiger or something, that is just like gnawing on the Fool. And there's a strong connection to the animal kingdom with this card. Obviously, you got bird and butterfly, and you have the snake here, and still, like, everything is surrounding the Fool in this fashion. And you got grapes, and there's two people intertwined down here, but the cat is the one thing that I wanted to bring attention to, because it's like kind of tamed and playful with the Fool. And there is, again, it's a relationship to being natural, in your natural state. And anybody who knows anything about cats obviously knows that they're very independent, and they will let you know when they are ready for anything, right? And this is what it represents for us. And I think that we have found collectively that we have been stuck in a habit, either through entity attachment, or some sort of multi-generational karma that has stuck around, or just what has been presented to us through all of the digitized versions of information. All of those things have embedded themselves into our neural pathways to the point where we don't even know that we're not acting out of our own self-interest, or that we are that we haven't relinquished our overdependency on others, because it's a habit. So this is something that at a deeper level, we really have to get aware of. Now, when it comes to where our conscious attention is, which has a lot to do here with the fact that the shit has already happened. Like, we've already, the bolts of lightning that have cracked and split and caused a lot of damage, it's already over. So now we're attempting to go forward. And part of that is with the grouse, it says express yourself through rhythm and movement by drumming and dancing. But it has a lot to do with being in the rhythm of the universe, with nature, with the planetary grid herself, right? Getting close to the heartbeat of the planet. Because we have growth to do. Five of Forces is summertime. It's growth. And this is what we're leading towards, because, by the time we get to May, and certainly by the time we get to the solstice, things are going to be very different. And what we put into place right now, what we acknowledge right now, what we come to terms with right now, what we let burn away right now is going to, again, have an impact on how we experience it later, because that's what the Wheel of Fortune means. It is the fact that fate is a cause and effect relationship. So if we ignore all of this, if we are in a complete denial, if we're not taking seriously the recklessness or the foolishness, if we double down on some things, then we will, reap that. And that's what this 10 of Discs is all about. Not only has it all culminated, but now it has been reaped and collected, and all of the richest potentials of it unfold. So this is a moment where it's important that we realize that we're being given quite a bit, and we're seeing what is accumulated as a result of all of our efforts so far. And we have to be willing to accept that, and also know that, the wheel's going to turn, and we have some growth to do. The Five of Forces is the upright is summer. It is a time to grow. And part of that is getting in the rhythm, the natural rhythm, not the rhythm that's being presented to you, not the rhythm that is being pushed into our brains, that is, like a machine digging out these trenches for us. It's about getting into our own rhythm, into our connection into the natural rhythm, and not what is being presented to us. So let's start looking at some astrology in the meantime. Well, in the meantime, this is what I want to focus on today. So here is today's chart, and we will talk about today's chart, absolutely, because we have the moon in Libra, thankfully, and that has been in some ways a nice little break, because we are going to have the Scorpio moon soon, and that's going to be our last kind of opportunity to where am I? I'm just like trying to talk and open windows at the same time, like Windows Online. So we will talk about this. So let's go back, because it's just, there was too many things in my own personal life, and the things that came through for me at this time that are now like coming back around in a way that I'm like, no way. I just feel like that I'm probably not the only one, considering what was going on. So I want you to take a look real quick just at like where everything is situated in terms of like these larger outer planets, and Uranus, how Chiron and Neptune, all three of these are still retrograde, but we have Jupiter in late Aquarius, we have Saturn in Aquarius as well, and then we have Pluto moving direct about 20, just into the 25 to 26 range. And then not so much what's going on here necessarily, Venus, Mercury, Sun, and Mars, although you'll see where they are when we go back, but these outer planets and where they are and what direction they're supposedly transiting, because I want to show you what this looks like. All right, I think it's here. It is. So we're looking at the 26th of April. We had a Scorpio full moon on a Draco marking in Scorpio. So that means that the sun in Taurus was opposite. It was conjunct with Uranus at that time. And Venus and Mercury were right here in Taurus as well. We had the North Node in Gemini, and then actually Mars was in Cancer at that point. So it was way less powerful than Mars is now in Scorpio, and is way more interested in protecting the emotional vulnerability. So, and also too, providing... I would say not necessarily providing, but there was I think it really was like pulling us in, like almost to the point where it was protecting us too much. So what we have here is this full moon that also is part of a yod, or finger of God, as you see here, where you have two aspects that are in a sextile, and then each of those are quincunx to one singular point here. So we have Chiron that is direct. In this, we have Uranus that is direct. These are very close to where they are now. Neptune was direct, and then you see here that Jupiter and Saturn and even Pluto, very close to where they currently are in the chart. So there's a time ripple here. There's like a time stamp that is back in when things were in the opposite, in terms of the sun in Taurus and the moon in Scorpio. So I'm just curious if anybody remembers what was happening around that time, if you have any like journal entries or social media posts around the 26th to 27th of April. I'd be curious to see. But what I do see here is that this Draco marking that the sun set up with this full moon here really gave us like a pretty clear and very deep window into what to expect based on natural conditions. So what else surrounded that? Well, you see that Chiron in Aries is in a position of triggering us every time we try to keep our consciousness, basically centralized and not getting pulled off into all of our more biological and emotional urges. The ruler of a nation, right? The power resulting from the formal integration of the collective desire for order. So anytime it seems like that, especially with this quincunx that would happen with the moon just a couple hours after it, right? So we can look at that actually. We can see that right after this full moon, a couple hours after it, then this yod becomes much more active. So we wanted to, I would say, the quincunx here between Scorpio and Aries is that keeping ourselves kind of centralized and our identity and a sense of self not pulled. And it's very similar to now, like getting pulled off of our center by these wounds being triggered. And I think that a lot of that was shown to us with this full moon in April. So the North Node in Gemini was really at a position having us, move in a direction that really highlighted the need to completely liquidate our past if we wanted to move forward. And that was where the North Node was pulling us all in this direction, to liquidate our past. But again, there was something here in Scorpio, which is about the collective production and what we produce in our cooperative connections. What we saw at that point, I think, was, had we been able to let go of those things then I think that what we saw it through the window with that full moon perhaps would have been more obvious to us. But it's taken since then, I think, for it to and this wasn't an eclipse. It's taken quite a bit of, it's taken since then for this to really unfold as the spring, summer, and now the fall. And I think that if we go back and just, scan what was happening during that time, like in the news and like where things stood in terms of all of the different particular lockdowns and social elements that had to do with the pandemic, or also too with the election in the United States, all of those things. I think that if we went back and saw, there was probably a lot there that we did not necessarily, we weren't ready to necessarily acknowledge. And part of that is because we weren't really trying to liquidate our past entirely. I think we were still kind of, we were in the throes of it, and we hadn't realized what we had to let go of at that point. And so, and then as the moon moved into 10 to 11 degrees Scorpio and 11 to 12 degrees Scorpio, we were much more emotionally in tune, I'd say, at that moment to, the current situation of relationships and the hierarchical examples of where things should be, rather than maybe tapping into how we are. It was like we get pulled back into the past, and it kept us from really getting our own sense of self and our own subjective experience to be kind of at the center, right? We kept getting pulled off, I think, in other directions. And I think this also has a lot to do, especially if you have Draco markings in your chart at that point. That was what you may have experienced at that time may have been very intense. It may have been something that came into your intuition, into a psychic imprint, a dream maybe, and that has stayed with you since then and is now finding it's not so much a resolution, but it's certainly rearing itself again in its full form this time. And there's nothing necessarily wrong because it was all there to show us, right? And so maybe what came through this Draco full moon was showing us exactly what to expect in situations where one's really potent and passionate desire to do something could be easily led astray by manipulation and a sense of self-preservation. And that has a lot to do with how Chiron continues to trigger us in terms of our own self-worth and our own subjective identity. And that's and where the North Node was. So I wanted to draw attention to that. Now, I just want to this is real quick, okay? We're going to look real quick. When was that? So we're going to look at the eclipse, right? The full moon lunar eclipse that we had on the 19th. And the only thing I want to draw attention to before we get into today's chart is so we had the eclipse, right? And the degree that Venus was at in its trine to Uranus, right? Uranus that was, lacking any stability in our material world, but also at the same time, because of that lack of stability, there was a pretty good indication of what was holding us back and what kind of baggage we were taking with us or couldn't take with us. And getting us to individuate, getting us to wake up, getting us to innovate and move forward. And the trine to Venus in Capricorn at that time had a lot to do with the transcendental nature of fire, right? So letting it burn away, not being afraid of it, knowing that the fire purifies. And when Mercury and the Sun came into that Cazimi 2 days ago, that should have been a pretty clear and a pretty bright aha moment of what has been brewing under the surface for quite a while, starting to make itself known, starting to it's like the magma under the surface finding its way up, right? And realizing that the experience of the fire ultimately is what is going to allow us to burn away what can't come with us. And this is what's going on now in just a much more surface level way, and something we can't really ignore. So now we're here on the last day of November, and we're gonna let's see here. Neptune's about to station direct tomorrow, and the fog is about to get so thick, like it's about to get so much more powerful with Neptune and Pisces. And remember, what is not resolved at the end of the cycle comes in, just like the genetic material that is part of the last generation is embedded in the new seed and is part of the blueprint. So what you and I and everyone else has been addressing and feeling into the experience of when it comes to a spiritual revival, a spiritual or transcendent rebirth when Neptune comes into Aries. This is our first real potentially visceral experience of what's to come and how we feel about it. And when Neptune stations direct, I mean, it's going to be like getting washed over, right? Like a huge wave coming and capsizing our pool, or capsizing us, our boat, or whatever we're in, or just a deluge, right? Neptune is just going to get really a lot more powerful, possibly like a Kraken release in some ways. If you want to use that imagery, because Poseidon was the one that, was in control of the Kraken. But really, it's just that the nebulous, formless nature of Pisces with Neptune as its ruler is about to get so much more of those things. And so knowing where we stand and who we stand with, and acting on that with that trine yesterday, and we're still, it's still in a trine with Neptune right now with Scorpio. So it's still pretty active in terms of obeying our own conscience, refusing to obey any orders of a social situation that we know is not right. And when the moon comes in the next day or so to meet that same point and trine Neptune, Neptune will have stationed at that point. And so then we'll start to really feel what we're going to have to face as a result of where we've aligned ourselves in terms of service to others or service to self. And, is it communion and cooperation, or is it power? And that's work that will come with you in the cycle when Neptune stations direct. And it's going to be so overwhelming and so powerful that there's no way to stop it, right? At that point, the nothing can stop what's coming is going to, and Neptune just dissolves everything it touches. So get ready for that as well. Propaganda out, out the ass, and not really knowing or being able to find a wall or a boundary. So, and I did the astrology for the week for all signs already. So it's important that you know where this is happening in your house, which house it's happening in, and where Mars is, because it'll show you what areas of your life this dynamic is going to take place. So let's go back a little bit here and take a look at our Libra moon. I'm not usually like a huge fan of the Libra moon, just because I have so much fire, but I do have Pluto in Libra, and it is my 9th house. And I have a lot. It's mostly Scorpio in my 9th house, but I do have Pluto there. Depending on which house system you use, that also will determine a lot of where certain things are placed house-wise. But I think it's also allowed us to think a little bit more like, get a little bit more in our head and look at things a little bit more practically and objectively with Libra, and our own emotions as well as, and be able to see both sides of something, feel out both sides of something, apply what we have learned about ourselves to our relationships, and the relationship as a whole to everything else. And so I think it's kind of taken the edge off of the serious of it with the moon in Virgo, but it's all going to come back into even more intensity when the moon comes into Scorpio. So right now there's kind of just like, I can just use my mind to make sure things are balanced, right? I don't have to really get into the feels of it. I can just transfigure myself and make everything balanced and whole, because I can just shapeshift, right? We've talked about shape-shifting before, but this is through the mind and giving of oneself to this process. So thankfully, emotionally, it just seems like it's okay. I'll do what I need to do, or I can find the balance within myself really easily by just kind of applying my knowledge. So it's been a break, it feels like. I'm not sure if it's like that for everybody. So again, it depends on where you find Libra in your chart and how it's interacting with other things. So the first thing it does, though, this morning, or late last night, as you see here, first thing it does, though, is that quincunx to Uranus. Now, Uranus is in a really interesting position that I have likened to window shopping for our reality. So Uranus is still retrograde. So this is a lot of internalized experience right now. But we're viewing, we have these, it's like window shopping, but we're window shopping for our material existence. What do we want? What do we want? What do we value, right? These are all Taurus types of things. What do we want? What's valuable to us? And what can we have, right? There's that five of keys, right? The wish is fulfilled. It's like, but Uranus is showing us all the options right now, and we're experiencing it within ourselves. Like, oh, I see this window, this window's got full of a display of these particular aspects that I really want. Oh, wait, there's another one. Oh, I really like the way this is laid out, or I like this display, or these products, or whatever, or this is the material abundance I want. Oh, look, there is, something else that I want, right? Because we've already gone through the idea that, well, when we accumulate things, there's baggage attached to it. That's just part of being in a material form. Now we're kind of, it's not regressing, but, we're doing this internalized journey right now through our own individuation process that is now like, okay, well, I know about the baggage, so maybe I can reinvestigate, what it is that's out there. Maybe I didn't see everything the first time. Maybe I was too busy, with this other aspect that I didn't even give myself the opportunity to window shop. So, there's no consistency here because it's Uranus, but at the same time, it's showing that it can be whatever we want it to be, because Uranus is not limited by time, space, or materialism. So, but Taurus is, and it's really about, bringing that awareness of the power that is infused in our material reality rather than the material and objective reality itself. But we have the option now to really consider, well, what do we want, and what is out there, and how do I feel about it, and what is that, what do I, does that align with my higher knowing of what's going on? So, but the first thing is the moon has that quincunx, right, at 12 degrees of 12 degrees of Libra. And so, there is a need socially for there to be people or individuals to keep going at deeper levels, to to quest for knowledge, which keeps burning the fires of the collective mind of a society, right? There's that fire again. Libra, strangely enough, for being an air sign, there's a lot of fire embedded in the symbolism of the Sabian symbols. So the first moment here is of this quincunx is like, how do I keep going on these quests for knowledge? How do I go into the depths to extract the deeper aspects, the fuel for the fire, right? How do I do that when it doesn't seem to really fit with this larger collective, unstable, but also infinite potential here of looking at what we could have, right? In terms of the objective material reality. So these two things don't seem to fit together. And so we've had to kind of figure out how to fit them together, right? How do we transmute these energies, because they don't really seem to, now both Libra and Taurus are ruled by Venus. So there's something about our sensitivity to the world around us that is probably going to be the particular skill set that we need in order to make sense of this, or to transmute this, right? To adjust ourselves in the moment. Because we can't not keep questing for knowledge and keep the fires of the collective mind burning, but we also can't be so, it's important that we come back out. We have to still extract and come back out. We can't stay down there forever. And we also can't endlessly consider all of the possibilities of which timeline we're going to go on when, we're really feeling drawn into, let's just get down to the what's underneath the surface of where I am right now. That's important too. So Then we find a couple of big transits after that. So number one, we find, remember when Saturn was in a sextile to Chiron, and they still are, by the way, it's still in that sextile. Well, what we're going to find here is that the Sun and Mercury are now in conjunction with Antares and will be for the next day or so. And each of them is going to then come into a, well, first Mercury comes into a sextile with Saturn. So it was a sextile to Chiron on Thanksgiving, right? And now giving us the guidepost or a scaffolding or a skeletal system in some ways that will allow us to start acting out the vision of who we all are. And this was a potential healing moment in terms of it's going to, Chiron will pull us off of our center, right? And really bring in all of the old guilt and shame about who we are and all of those, wounded healer things coming in while we're still trying to, like, if we can just focus on who we want to be, who we can be, what we can manifest within ourselves, then we can actually bring it to fruition. Chiron keeps pulling us off and be like, oh, you remember that? Oh, you remember that? You remember when that happened? Yeah, you should feel bad about that. Or you'll never, the only way that you'll ever feel better is if you continue to use this identity to help other people heal, blah, 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 all the wounded healer stuff. So now Mercury up here is in, like I said, was in a trine to Chiron, right? Like that baseline, and now is in a sextile to Saturn at Antares, which means that the Sun is going to sextile Saturn, and they're both at Antares. So let's talk about Antares, because this is, I think, a misunderstood type of energy until you start looking at it in a broader context. Now, Antares is a large star, and Antares also is connected to Archangel Uriel. It is the rival of Mars. It's a very bright red star, and it ultimately, the heart of the Scorpion is a feminine signature. Scorpio is a water sign, so there is a feminine, matriarchal almost energy of darkness and space and receptivity and attraction that goes in, and flow, right, and fluidity. That is obviously what water represents. So there is a very distinct maternal and matriarchal, very feminine signature that is related to Antares, despite having all of this fire element. And we can connect that, number one, to Archangel Uriel in terms of the fire of God is the purification element. It's something that's coming in that is allowing for us or us, those who are quote unquote less evolved. There's a concern for helping people along. And so Antares as a star can help against evil spirits. This is really important. If you have been addressing or dealing with or even considering the possibility that there is entity attachment or some sort of karmic genetic pattern that continues to come through energetically, if you have something that is connected to you that you need to cut out, Antares is here to do it, but it burns it away, right? It's like burning it away and then cauterizing the wound. It's not a pleasant experience for those that are struggling to get up the staircase, but for the Antarian starseeds who are, against their, I wouldn't say better judgment, but it's not very often that they come into form because they are so much more themselves and non-physical, but there is help against evil spirits. There's a power of driving them away and binding them. This is a very strong connection to Antares. This is going, and right now it is with the Sun and Mercury, it's really on top of our awareness, and the way that we're finding our voice, the way that our mind is functioning, and to have that sextile with Saturn, again, is kind of like an anchor into the I hate to use the term New Age, because now it's a completely loaded term, and you have some factions that are like no, and some factions that are like yes, and so I'm not even going to get into that, but what I'm saying, because it's Aquarius and Saturn is there is an anchor into the energy that's moving through the collective that we're coming into. And it has a lot to do with standing in our power and realizing that the symbols that we have been infusing are actually going to turn into the power itself. And so whatever that alignment is for you, what does Aquarius mean to you, is going to be the backbone in some ways of this. I don't even know how to say it other than some sort of exorcism, right? Through us individually, through the collective as a whole. And so Antares is a big part of this. So it has a very Mars nature, because it is... it's very belligerent. It can be. And so it makes people tough and belligerent, and it's pugnacious. That's a funny word. It's important star for military personnel, and it's said to convey mental alertness, strategic ability, and courage, and to make daredevils, right? So there is a very strong, tough element to Antares that has to do with the fire of purification. This is why I'm saying just let it burn, right? You don't have to start any fires, because my God, they're already going, and they've been going. And I would say a couple days ago, it made it very clear to us in our minds and in our, I would say that there is something that's been brewing for a while under the surface that is going to be our alchemical fire. And that's why I say let it burn, not for the destructive aspect, because fire is the catalyst for chemical reaction and for alchemy. And, Sagittarius is the alchemical fire. And this is the sign that we find Antares. In the constellation, it's in Scorpio. So it can be very violent. And you have to be prepared at all times for sudden incidents and unforeseen events and potential accidents. And it can be violent and credited with even having significant for a violent death or in battle, right? So, I mean, this is when you're using it more for like horary astrology, where you're making predictions, or ancient astrology and you're looking at fixed stars. So that's something to consider as well. But there's something about the secret knowledge of the great disaster that Uriel only revealed to those judged able to accept it and still believe in the goodness of all. So that has to be almost like a prerequisite for not having this like just be a destructive element, if that makes sense. With Antares. So we see that Mercury and the Sun, we want to start fires, right? We want to, like, our minds and our voice, it's like we want to be this Antares element. And in the back of our mind, perhaps, or in our intention, it's like it's here to root out and to burn away and to assist those who have not gotten to the point yet that we are. And we can invest that energy into where Saturn is in terms of like really executing this. It's like it can charge in some ways the archetype that is looking to be the actual power itself. And Sagittarius very much is abstraction. Right? Abstraction through archetypal symbols and the transference of the human experience through symbolic representation. Sagittarius is because it's meaning. It's meaning collectively, not our own meaning, but the meaning that is pervasive through a collective or the human collective. And so in some ways, this fire, if we're going to direct it, maybe what we can do is invest it into, invest it into where, into the symbol that we want to bring alive, that is going to allow us to be much more of an authority figure, to find some stabilization and crystallization. And with the trine to Chiron, of course, it's just, straight up just burning away all of the burning away all of the different aspects that are continuing to come in and pull us off of our own center of manifestation, trying to, attempting to make ourselves the best version of ourselves and to see the full picture of our potential. So burning away that as well. This is just let it burn, guys. Just let it burn. So now, and that's Mercury sextile Saturn, the Sun trine Chiron. So let's move back to the moon while this is all happening, because this was all happening overnight. So curious what people's dream state has been like. I definitely had family-oriented dreams and things of that nature, so I'm not surprised. So by this afternoon, the moon's going to move into a square with Venus in Capricorn. That is, and at the very same time is in a quincunx to Neptune. And so, we just all want to get along, don't we? And if we all just went to the place we knew would revive us and give us a sense of almost, hold on. Something that we can all enjoy, right? That we all go to together and that we're at together, like going to the beach, for instance, but each person is being revived and enjoying this particular occasion, but we're all together. So I feel what's gonna, we're going to want to just like relax basically and enjoy this process or enjoy ourselves. And Venus is like, no, we got a relay race to run. Like the dynamic interchange of competition between groups is what makes our group, whatever that is, stronger and more cohesive. And Venus has really been drawing our value in our relationships and our material life and even our concept of justice and fairness into we have to work together. And this may be by the end of the day, like I don't want to run a race. What I feel like is just everybody going and doing the thing I know that they will do to be revived and taken care of. And again, here's a quincunx to Neptune in Pisces, speaking of the beach, is you're totally consumed by the water. You're not approaching it and having this Sunday day at the beach. That's how we're all feeling. It'll be like, no, you're completely consumed. You're completely dissolved into it. You're no separate from the water in the ocean. You're having a full transcendent experience. Whereas the moon is trying to give us some sort of, sense of like boundary at the very least with Libra. Like we may transfigure ourselves in order to fit the scale and have it balanced, but that's a different experience entirely than, experiencing ourselves as one drop in the ocean. This is really keeping us kind of focused on some level, at least emotionally in that moment, on the fact that we are distinctly different and need to acknowledge that that's the case. I think that those two things are going to be because the moon too wants to be in Pisces, right? That part of ourselves is the drop of water that is the no different than the full ocean of consciousness. So there will also, I think that'll work in our favor because it is the moon. So just, it's okay to align ourselves with that, or certainly give ourselves over to that as a means to adjust ourselves in a situation where we may feel like, I don't want to get in the water. I just want to sit by it and know that it's going to, rejuvenate my soul. So there's going to have to be some sort of adjustment at that point because what if the tide comes in basically and you're like, well, I'm being consumed by it now. So I guess that's where I am. And Venus, like I said, Venus in a square at the same position is like, okay, we need to work together, right? We can't just like sit by and on the sidelines and enjoy it all. We actually have to work together in real time on a real thing in order to create something substantial. So I know we're tired, and I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't do those things. I'm just saying that square to Venus is going to make it, we're going to have a struggle with that. So, but the good news is that Venus then comes into a sextile with Neptune, actually. And so, even though we may not want to get directly involved, Venus and Neptune are going to kind of force our hand in that way. So the sextile, again, that 60-degree angle where we make an investment, where there is a reconciliation or a harmonization, is, it is the working together, right, with a common purpose and everybody putting their 100% in, that we can have an impact on what we are going to take with us in a spiritual sense through the rest of the cycle of Neptune and Pisces, knowing what's coming. And if we work together and bolster each other in our group potential here, that is going to have an impact on what we take with us karmically and spiritually into the next cycle. So I do, and that does not have anything to do with trying to make everybody happy in the moment, right? I think that's really going to be something that comes out very strongly later. And then the moon will come to square Pluto and will be in a trine to Jupiter. So squaring Pluto, but also trine Jupiter in Aquarius. And then what is that? We may feel adept enough to be able to move. Our spiritual will and our love are moving, it's spinning so fastly. We can change from one into the other so seamlessly that we are very adept at a transfiguration and reconstruction process, right? There's something about the interaction of these two, of the will and love, when there's a need, when a crisis arises. But the crisis is so... Pluto and Capricorn, I mean, that is the crisis, right? That the lid is being pulled back on what normally is hidden, and everything around it destroyed. That in that moment, we may even find, and this is late tonight, right? This is as the day on the East Coast of the U.S. is ending, and will soon cross over into December 1st. This is for as adept as we are in our ability to be an adept reconstructor in the face of some sort of crisis, when it really is a critical need. We're going to find some strong resistance or some friction with the very real, raw, and powerful destruction of everything, but what is the underlying occult messages that have been framing our reality now for quite a while. So I think that, that's kind of like shock and horror, but in a trine to Jupiter in the same moment here is really about, this is painful and difficult, right? The square to Pluto. Where our strength is in this trine, because it is a very strong element, is that we have the capacity to really be able to, if we have the ability to really measure, let's put it this way. So if we apply our knowledge of natural law to a solution, with our mental efficiency, I feel like that it will then, and Jupiter is providing this. It's like the resources and the advocacy and the expansion of Jupiter, even though it's in Aquarius, and like I said, those thunderbolts keeping us in our lane, it's just like, you've been trained this whole time, and now we get to see if you actually are able to solve problems with this ability that you have developed over time as a result of living in our society, right? Do you have the capacity to measure, to apply what you've learned to a situation to solve a problem? And this will, like I said, this is finding some strength for our ability each individually to be adept enough to shift from spiritual will to love in such a seamless way that they look like they're changing into each other. So, wow. But it's come from the last 6 months, I would say, in terms of where we've been, what we've learned. Have we actually like developed our skill? Have we learned about natural law to the point where we are able to actually solve problems? And this goes both ways. So the strength in being able to use our mental efficiency to solve a problem is going to be aligned with our own personal experience of being able to shift from love to spiritual will at as the need arises. I guess that's the point, right? Because Libra, again, is a closed system of transfiguration and reconstruction because you're measuring out material aspects. And so you can move from one side to the other seamlessly to the point where you don't even see a difference. And this will, again, I think, provide some strength and a base for this very for this skill. And I think if we're using it for the right reason, I think that's really what's trying to come through. And instead of trying to stop what this is, which is Pluto, right? Instead of trying to stop it burning down or try to like change ourselves around emotionally in order to, minimize the damage, what we really can do is to take the advocacy or the resource of Jupiter in terms of, here, you've been taught what to expect based on all of your experience with natural law so far, and you can solve a problem. And that's going to really allow each of us to emotionally transfigure and reconstruct ourselves to solve a problem that has much more to do with where we're going, has to do with who we are as a whole, right, Aquarius, and humanity in general. Instead of trying to, like I said, reconstruct ourselves and shift ourselves around emotionally to mitigate something that is so powerful and raw that we should really not get in its way, right? Just let it burn. Just let it burn. Because what's going to come out of it is a total renewal. But it's not going to be easy, that's for sure. So, my friends, I'm going to leave it there for today. It's so good to be back in this schedule. I really appreciate all of you being here. It's snowing right now where I'm at, so it's kind of like this new blanket of whiteness and the snow reflects light, so everything's brighter, and it's quiet, right? So it kind of gives this sense that everything is going dormant and it's only just this really reflective surface on top, and it almost hides everything in some ways, but it also purifies what's happening as well. So if you are interested in a reading, especially an eclipse reading, we look at the next 6 months of your with your natal chart. That is something that you can either email me for, or you can go to catalystenergies.net. Those two things are both in the description box below that you can link to. You also can get on my email list when I send out, announcements for new services or sales or anything like that. And that's accessible through the website. So you can just go to catalystenergies.net and there's a splash page that comes up on the homepage, and you can just sign up for the email list there, and you get about 2 or 3 a month. And if you want to connect on social media, you can do that. Everything you need is in the description box below. And if you want to support this work financially and have access to exclusive content, you can do so through Subscribestar, and I thank you so much for doing that. And that is also accessible by the link in the description box below. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And we will be hopefully together tomorrow. I did mention earlier that before even other things changed, that there would be some need to be flexible this week. So tomorrow might be one of those days. We'll see. I hope not. I really want to get back into the swing of these transmissions because I feel like they help all of us, including me. So in the meantime, have a great day, guys. Let it burn. You don't need to start any fires yourself. Unless you are really drawn to do so. But just know that these fires have been building under the surface for a very long time now. And so now they're just making their way up and will do the work that the fires need to do. And we'll just get ready for this eclipse portal. Remember, fire is the catalyst for a change. So when we can look beyond that, when we can see the transcendental nature of that, as we were invited to do at the full moon, then letting it burn is something that we can actually do, but it doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can do for ourselves in the meantime. So if you are also interested in energetic support, you can book that through the website as well, and really help with cord cutting, psychic surgery, all these things you can do through the Reiki treatment, and addressing the areas that energetically need to be maybe purged, or where there are attachments. So that can come through the Reiki session as well. So I love you guys. Thanks for being here, and we will connect very soon, hopefully tomorrow.